Truth be told, it is one thing for God to give a word. There is a place of responsibility. There's a place that calls us to action. The word of God, if it fulfills in a void, then the world would be in a better shape than it is today. God can give a word and it can be delayed. It can even be denied in the lives of men. So be careful to not just receive the word with joy. Make sure the word take root, that Jesus said in the parable of the sower. Make sure it takes root. Don't just rejoice. Make sure it takes root in your own life, in your individual heart. Make sure the word has a place for fulfillment with you. And part of the responsibility we owe ourselves to see God move in our lives is to sustain a strong spirit. That responsibility is yours and is forever yours. Your spirit as a believer has escaped the death that happened in Adam. There's a death of the human spirit that happened in Adam. Now that may sound a bit contradictory because spirits don't die. But if you remember, God said to Adam, in the day you eat of this tree, you will die. Is that not what he said? So death doesn't always mean cessation of life in the spirit. In the physical, it may mean cessation of life. But in the spirit, that's not what it means. A dead human spirit is simply a spirit disconnected from the life of God. Because God said if you eat it, you will die. Adam ate it, he didn't die in the sense of cessation of life. But his spirit was put in darkness. His spirit lost the ability to connect to the Spirit of God. What it means is that it's like the power bank or the power pack that came with his spiritual battery that he can use to charge his battery got burnt. So he can no longer charge on the side of God. A dead human spirit, if it's ever charged up, it is only charged up with darkness, because it can still charge, but it cannot charge with life from the side of God. It can only charge with life from the side of the devil. So every human spirit can connect to a higher source of power, whether it is alive or dead. And some unbelievers have learned this over the years. They practice it. They know how to connect their spirit to the spirit of the enemy and draw power from darkness. And they can do some stuff. Like the magicians of Egypt. When Moses connected his spirit to God in Exodus chapter 3, there was a charge that took place. He came to Egypt in excitement with that charge. One of the things he could do was to drop a staff, and the staff will become a serpent. Because what Moses didn't know was that one of the highest deities that the Egyptians bowed to was a serpentine demon, and God wanted to consume that demon. Moses probably thought it was just a show of power. So he came, and when he said to Pharaoh, "Thus said the God of the Hebrews, let my people go," and Pharaoh brought the first argument, what he quickly did was to bring out the staff, that thing that terrified him in the wilderness. He thought it was going to terrify Pharaoh. Meanwhile, God had a higher agenda. He quickly brought out the rod, dropped it on the ground. The thing became a serpent. I'm sure he was the only one that panicked, because Pharaoh just sat there looking at it. Just because you're afraid of snake doesn't mean Pharaoh is afraid of snake. Now, unknown to Moses, apart from God, there are other sources of power that the human spirit can connect to. He dropped what surprised him in the wilderness, and all of a sudden from the back of Pharaoh came the Magi's, the the company of the magicians. And they came and saw the serpent that came out of the rod of Moses. And they also came with rods. But this is not rod from God. This is rod from the other side. They have been able to connect their spirit to the spirit of darkness and draw power enough to even want to compete with God. So they brought out the staff and then they dropped it on the ground and serpents came out too. I'm sure it's for the first time Moses realized that this is a big business. This is no joke. Serpents came out of all of theirs. I'm sure, of course, Moses may not know what will happen next. But Yahweh stepped in and showed the superiority of God over Satan. And from nowhere, the serpent that came out of the rod of Moses began to devour the others. And in one split moment, all the Egyptian rods were gone. The power of the serpent was broken that day. That was where God started from. So the dead human spirit of man, dead or alive, is a powerhouse. It is a battery. It sustains the capacity to draw power and retain power. The world around you does not necessarily respond to your physical strength. It responds to your spiritual strength. This is the reality of life.